Sometimes the best way to really get a handle on complex psychological research isn't from some dusty textbook. It's through a single, powerful human story. And that's exactly what we're doing today. We're going to look at excerpts from the memoir, Tell Me I'm Not Invisible, to see how a personal account of trauma just vividly brings the clinical research on attachment, shame, and survival to life. Let's explore how that happens. The author uses this haunting phrase to describe his experience in junior high. It's such a powerful hook, and it makes you ask a really fundamental question. How does a child learn to become invisible? I mean, what happens in a home that teaches a kid that the safest thing they can possibly be is a ghost?
Well, to answer that, we have to go all the way back to the beginning. The author's journey into invisibility, it didn't just start with one big event. It started with a slow, corrosive emotional environment that created this deep foundational wound.
So on one side, you've got the basic things every single child needs to develop in a healthy way. And on the other side, you have the author's reality. He describes a home with this unshakable silence from his father and a mother who was like a storm you learn to anticipate. This huge gap between what a child needs and what he actually got, that's where the story and the psychology really begins. This gap, well, it has a clinical name. In psychological research, it's called insecure attachment. And it's so much more than just a feeling. It's like a template for all of your future relationships that teaches you the world isn't safe and that people, fundamentally, can't be trusted. And we can get even more specific here. The research points to a particular kind of insecure attachment called disorganized attachment. This is what happens when the very person who's supposed to be your safe haven is also the source of your fear. The child is just completely trapped. There's no one to run to when the person you'd run to is the one you're running from. And this is what that clinical concept feels like in real life. This quote, it isn't just poetic. It's a perfect description of the kind of environment that creates disorganized attachment. The home is totally unpredictable, and safety is just never, ever guaranteed. This memory is just heartbreaking. He's 4 or 5 years old, panicking in a swimming pool, and an instructor holds him and protects him. But his immediate reaction isn't just relief, it's shame. He writes that he knew, even at that age, that he wasn't supposed to want that feeling of safety. That's how completely foreign comfort was to him. That moment, he says, was the birth of his shame. So what does a kid do in an environment like that? Well, they adapt. They have to. They develop survival strategies. And this next part explores how the author's internal world of shame and fear started to show up on the outside, especially at school. Years and years later, when he became a mental health professional himself, the author stumbled across this term. It wasn't that he was choosing to be silent. It was an actual condition, an inability to speak in certain situations that was born out of just overwhelming anxiety. The reality of that condition is just staggering. I mean, think about it for a second. Years of school, day in and day out, without saying a single word in class. He learned that silence was a way to hide, a way to become invisible, and therefore stay safe. Another key survival tool he used was dissociation. You can think of it as the mind's emergency escape hatch. When reality is just too painful or chaotic, the mind basically checks out. It disconnects to protect itself from feelings that are just too much to handle. But, of course, this protection came at a price. The author explains that he never really experienced the classic anxiety symptoms, like a racing heart or sweaty palms, because he was so disconnected from his own body. The very thing that kept him safe from his emotional pain also cut him off from his physical self. Now, these survival strategies, they aren't unique to just one person's story. Not at all. Research on childhood maltreatment shows a really clear pattern of long-term effects that shape how survivors see themselves and the world around them. This list from the research, it reads like a blueprint for the author's entire experience. The core wound of abuse creates this deep sense of shame, an inability to trust people, a paralyzing fear of being rejected, and this habit of hiding your true self to stay safe. It's basically the psychological profile of invisibility. And this gets right to the heart of it. The author's silence wasn't just about being shy. It was a deeply ingrained defense mechanism. To want something, a friend, a kind word, any affection, that meant risking rejection, which would only confirm the toxic shame he already felt deep down. that he was worthless. Silence was his fortress against that pain.
But even inside that fortress, there was this deep human yearning, a desperate desire to be seen. And for the author, that longing found a powerful mirror in a very, very unexpected place, a classic horror film.
You see, he didn't watch the movie Carrie and see a horror movie. He saw it as a vision of his own life. He completely identified with her silence, her invisibility, and that deep, corrosive shame that was instilled in her by an abusive mother. But this is the crucial part. He didn't want the supernatural powers or the bloody revenge at the prom. What he wanted was that one moment of pure validation. The moment when Tommy, the popular boy, looks at Carrie with genuine kindness and makes her feel, maybe for the very first time, like she actually matters. That was the fantasy, to just be truly seen. This one sentence just perfectly captures the central conflict for a trauma survivor. The desire for connection is absolutely immense, but the fear of it is just as powerful. To be seen is to be vulnerable, and for someone who learned early on that vulnerability leads to pain, well, that is the most terrifying thing in the entire world. So, is that where the story ends? A life just defined by fear and invisibility? No, absolutely not. The research and the author's own journey show us that there is a path forward. There is a way to heal these early wounds. This is such a hopeful concept, isn't it? It means that your early life experiences, they're not a life sentence. Through things like therapy, self-reflection, and new safe relationships, a person can actually earn a secure attachment style as an adult. You can literally rewire those old templates. So what does that healing look like? Well, a huge part of it is about storytelling. It's about taking these chaotic, shame-filled memories from the past and building a coherent story around them. It's about finally, truly understanding that what happened was not your fault, and that the things you did to adapt, like becoming invisible, were exactly what you had to do to survive. And that brings us to our final question. This story powerfully shows us that our deepest survival instincts, things like becoming invisible, are born from a logical, desperate need for safety. Healing really begins when we can look back and rewrite that narrative, not as one of shame, but one of incredible survival. The past shapes us, for sure, but we are the ones who get to write the next chapter.